What is going on, Clippers fans? Welcome to Season 3, Episode 40 of Clips and Dip. I am Chuck Mockler. We got the full crew today. Adam Oz and Will Updike is here. We hope everyone is being safe. We hope everyone is doing everything they can to feel okay. We're going to keep it a little short for y'all today. We're talking the Clippers versus the Heat and kind of some of the Clippers issues right now. Adam and Will, we haven't spoken all three as a unit on the show in a while. The Clippers game was delayed on Saturday. I think we all understood why. Will, Adam, how are you? How are you fellas doing? Adam, we'll
Doing
start
good.
with
I
you.
mean, it's been a wild 5 days if you live in Southern California. It's been kind of a lot. So yeah, I'm doing all right.
Adam's in the car, ready to go at a moment's notice, should he have to. If you can't see Adam in the car, check us out at youtube.com/Clippers podcast. Adam, how are you? How's the new cat? I'm sure that's nice to have in this kind of stressful time.
Hanging in there. It has been nice to have a little cat companionship while I'm hanging out at home a lot. I had someone come over yesterday because there's no way I could figure this out in a suitable amount of time. So I went on TaskRabbit and had someone build me this huge cat tree. And this guy got it done in like 45 minutes with all his, power tool stuff. That would have probably taken me all day. So the
Power
cat
tools?
cats like to climb, and the cat's in heaven.
Is the cat tree larger than your home? Because power tools sounds intimidating for how large of a cat tree this must
I
be.
mean, I think it's over 7 feet tall. It's like 80 inches tall. It's got all these little swinging, little cat balls or a mouse they can play with and a rope. And it's a cat mansion. It's crazy.
All right. Adam's a full-on cat dad now. That's fantastic.
I'm in.
Okay, so before we talk about Clippers versus Heat and a little bit of the Nets game, we kind of have to talk about how the Clippers have not been very good over the last 15 games. We're going to look at 5-game sample sizes for these upcoming games, but over the last 15 games, Clippers are 7-8. They've slipped in a lot of things that I think kind of just show some fatigue, right? They've slipped in every rebounding stat, total rebounds and percentages. They've slipped in three-point percentage. They've slipped in defensive rating, still top 10. They've slipped in offensive rating. Will, what do you think you see? Is it just fatigue or is it really the dog days of the season as Tyler has talked and we're just kind of like burning the last of the oil before Kawhi gets fully back into playing the full slate of what he does?
It's cat
I mean,
days.
that's what I hope it is, right? Because if not, the answer is that this is a regression to the means from where the Clippers had overexceeded early in the season, and maybe this is a little bit closer to what this team is, which would be very, very disappointing. So yes, I'm hoping, I'm optimistic that this is just kind of the doldrums of the season. It's difficult to maintain that sort of energy on the boards. It's difficult to maintain that sort of defensive intensity, especially when you get around, that post-holiday stretch, pre-All-Star break. I feel like it's a very weird. It must be a very weird time to play. It's a very weird time, like just in the regular workplace for an average human being.
Sure,
so
yeah.
I can't imagine what the vibes are like on the team. But I think that's been clear on the court too. Well, I still feel like this team. Last couple of losses aside, they largely are in most of these games. We have seen more double-digit losses in this last 15-game span too, which is a little bit more concerning. Whereas the margin of loss wasn't as large earlier in the season. So I'm hoping that it is just it's something that just needs a reset and to sort of reestablish those habits. The good thing is, right, is that they had them and we've seen it and we've seen the identity and we've seen it
Like
consistently
that, yeah.
enough that we know what this team is and we know what they're going to do. It's not like years past where it's like, yeah, are they this? Are they this? Now they need to find a new thing. Oh, this is who we are. Blah, 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 blah. So that is encouraging, right? That they at least know they know where to course correct too. Like they're not, they're not navigating this in the dark. But I think if you're a Clippers fan and you're looking at this roster and you're thinking about the age and you're looking at the competition in the West, let's just keep our fingers crossed that this is just a little bit of fatigue in the doldrums of the season.
I like what you said kind of about the regression to the mean, because Adam, you kind of brought up the rebounding last week a little bit, and we've all praised and kind of been pleasantly surprised at how good the Clippers rebounding has been kind of up until this last stretch. Do we think the rebounding is going back to the mean? I don't,
Yeah, I
I
think
like what, yeah.
the rebounding, to me, the rate at which they were rebounding at wasn't sustainable based upon personnel, but it's gotten so low now, this isn't sustainable either.
Right.
It's somewhere in the middle between these two things. Like, I don't think they're a bottom 5. They basically went from like a top 5 rebounding team to a bottom 5 rebounding team over the last 15 games. And that's too much of a swing for me to believe that they can keep rebounding this poorly. I think they're better than this. But also, they've lost 4 or 5. They're 2-4 their last 6 games, and over the last 6 games, their defensive ranking is 20th. The last 6 games.
Oh.
So, and if you go back 7, now it's 10th. So it's really just the last 6 games where it's been really bad on the defensive end, and they've started off a couple of those games well. Obviously, the Atlanta games in there where they blew them out. They had the big early lead in OKC, in Minnesota. They let go of both of those, and they got crushed by Denver the other night, which I think was, them
Yeah.
dealing with some really unique circumstances. That's kind of an outlier. But even before that, the defensive numbers were down over this recent stretch here. So to your point of talking about fatigue, I think that's it for the most part. I think fatigue, dog days, getting Kawhi Leonard back, a lot of moving parts at once for this team to try to figure out. But as Will was saying, they know what they need to do. They know the way to play. They've done it the majority of the season. It shouldn't take a Herculean effort for them to get back to basics and get back to having that defensive identity, which is a lot of what they talked about today at practice.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting to your point about just that Wednesday game against the Nuggets. Nico Batum talking about that, about how he was checking his phone up until like 3 minutes before tip off, and planning the. It was it was crazy they played that game. I think we can probably all agree.
Yeah, T-Man basically said, "Yeah, I didn't want to play that game."
No, like it was
come on.
Pre-game Ty Lue was like, we're going to try. Like, I'm going to try and get something out of these guys, but none of us are really into it right now. And the Kawhi, it's tough too, because like we've had 2 games back with Kawhi. And the way that they're managing his minutes, right, is for the long run, it makes sense. He plays the longer stretches. He gets to his 20 minutes. He's not going to be closing games. That's just how it goes. But that also is making kind of course correction, I think, a little more difficult, right? Because it's kind of the in-game rhythm. You're going from kind of the full rotation in the first half to the full rotation for like 6.5 minutes of the second half, and then you're shortened again. So like there's some rhythm issues that
I gotta disagree with this a little bit. I gotta push back on this a little bit. Kawhi has been in 2 of these 15 games. Like, this isn't a Kawhi issue. This is
no. I wasn't blaming Kawhi. I meant it as far as like the course correction. It seems like it's just throwing an extra thing they have to deal with in terms of like Kawhi ramping up. No, it's not.
For sure.
It's never a Kawhi problem.
And sure, we haven't even seen Kawhi at like 75%, I would say, of his capacity, but like he very meaningfully improves the Clippers as a team in every single one of these metrics that we've seen slide.
Yeah. He was minus 11, I think, for that one stretch in the mini game. But again, he's coming back. And they do have that blueprint. Is this next slate of games kind of what they need? Like their schedule isn't incredible, right? We have, whenever they're going to play the Hornets. Yeah, it's Heat, Nets, Blazers. That's a stretch where they can kind of figure at least the defensive stuff out, because we're going to get into some of the Heat stats over the last 5 games. They've been bad. But like this feels like a part of the schedule they can kind of get right a little bit, I would hope.
They should. They need to go at least win 2 of those next 3. If not, win the next 3 altogether, because it is a back-to-back Wednesday, Thursday at home against Brooklyn, Thursday night. up in Portland against the Blazers, so that's not easy. Another back-to-back. They need to be able to kind of right the ship before taking on the Lakers, because I think that's going to be a really tough game. Like these 4 Lakers games coming up within the span of a month and a half,
Yeah.
it feels consequential. It feels very meaningful to how both these teams end up finishing in the standings.
I mean, these teams are half a game out from one
Yeah,
another right now.
I had it pulled up too.
And it could be like it could come down. It could come down to that. Who knows? But yeah, I would agree. It's again, no team is a tune-up team unless we are fully healthy. But this is an opportunity on the schedule after. It's understandable if they hit a wall, and I do think. Like I said, I worry that it's a regression of the means, but it's also understandable that they were kind of losing focus and losing some of like the vigor and intensity at the same time as taking on a pretty rough stretch of games.
Yeah. And when you overachieve too, like I think we don't use a lot of blanket statements on this pod, but I think most people would agree that the Clippers overachieved with Kawhi Leonard out of the lineup, right? To overachieve, kind of by just logically, you have to overexert yourself compared to, right? So I think that has something to do with it. And so this we talk about the Lakers game being important. The Spurs game is important for the standings. We're 2 games ahead of the Spurs coming up like that. And that is like, these are crunch time games. The seeding is so jammed up right now. So I think, Adam, I agree. They got to get 2 out of 3 here for me to feel like pretty good, or, not as stressed, I guess, about the seeding. Because, yeah, that Lakers game, that's going to be a lot.
I think one thing that stands out most, just the easiest answer to a lot of the problems going on the offensive end, at least. Obviously, Kawhi Leonard can fix what ails them there, but they started off the season, the first 12 games, they were 17th offensively. And that was pretty solid for a team without Kawhi Leonard. But the reason that happened is because they were 3rd in three-point shooting during that time. They were shooting 39%. And as soon as Derrick Jones Jr. and Chris Dunn regressed, as they have, well, now the last 13 games, they're 25th on the offensive end. It's like it's as simple as just some of the three-point shooting from them has dramatically shifted back to guys, career averages.
Yeah, I wonder if it's going to be like we're kind of dealing with, some of the Terrence Mann effect, but times 3 now, because we have Dunn and Derrick Jones, who, like, the outside shooting for Terrence Mann last year, it was very bad to start, and then it kind of evened out and we were good. It feels like we're maybe getting a little bit of the opposite with Dunn and Derrick Jones Jr., but I'm hoping they start falling because, Will, we were talking about this last time we watched the game together. Teams are funneling the ball to Chris Dunn. Teams are standing there and borderline just holding their arms like this on defense. So Chris Dunn, if he just gets into another rhythm, I don't know. I hope it can come back soon.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see. It can't be this bad.
Right? Because I think Justin Rousseau tweeted it out. For those of you who don't know, Justin Rousseau is a wonderful reporter. We refer to him as Rousseau because Adam does, so he sounds like a French Canadian fur trapper. It's very funny. But he's a wonderful reporter, and you should subscribe to Rousseau Writes. He had a tweet that I'm trying to find where, like, Dunn is shooting something like 26% from corner threes or something like that recently, and he's not that bad. We know that he's not, a lights out shooter, but he's not 26. Yeah, it's real bad. Like, it's got to come back at some point.
He and DJ are both career 32% three-point shooters. And Dunn over his last 13 games is about 32%. So it's not as bad as it was for a while. He's gotten a little bit better. But if either of them could catch a little bit of a hot streak, that would be pretty big for this team.
Like a little bit of.
Who would you put your bet on? Who's more likely to snap into a hot streak?
Off the numbers, DJ. But
take that to the bank. Adam Oslin says bet the over on DJ threes.
He's been really bad lately. So he's the one who should probably start progressing more to the mean more drastically. But I neither guy has proven it at this level. Like DJ's at 35% from three now on the season. After I think the first 12 games he was shooting like 48% from three.
35.4, yeah.
It's gotten pretty dramatically down for him over the last couple of weeks.
And it makes
it's wild because it looks so much worse. I didn't realize that I had figured he was probably like 10% below his career average from watching it, but he's just hovering right around there.
He's doing his thing. And the stuff that's what makes it hard too is like Dunn and Derek Jones Jr. are effectively competing for the last starting spot. I know we're doing this rotating thing for a while, but the starting lineup is going to solidify at some point. We're not going into the playoffs. The last 5 games before the playoffs aren't going to play with a rotating starting lineup. Is all. I don't think that's going to happen. So this, I think, makes it a little bit harder for Ty Lue too. He's like, both these guys are shooting poorly. Like, great. Like, this doesn't really help him figure out who's going to start. I don't think. Maybe I'm blowing it too much out of proportion with the starting lineup stuff, but like it's gonna settle at some point, or has to.
To me, it's destiny for DJ to stay in the starting lineup because the whole logic of he needs Chris Dunn out there for another ball handler is going to go by the wayside once Kawhi Leonard gets up to 30 minutes again. Then you have the other ball handler. So I would think that means DJ by the end of the season will be the more consistent starter.
Yeah, and Will, you're on team start Derek Jones Jr.
Oh yeah, I've been on record. I just think it makes more sense. Obviously things change if Dunn goes on a hot streak from 3 or something, because I do see that being very valuable, especially with how slow the offense has been, at least until Kawhi ramps back up. But assuming full health, which I know is saying a lot, it just makes a lot more sense for me for Derek Jones Jr. in there. And I've talked about it before, but I just like the athleticism. I like the versatility and just having some more size. I just don't, with the type of guards that we have on this team, I just don't really see the argument for having 3 of them in your starting lineup. I don't see it.
I don't see it. Yeah, and we'll know. I don't know when we're going to know what the starting lineup solidifies to, but it has to happen at some point. Anything else on the Clippers' woes before we get into a breakdown of a team that very much could help them get out of some of these offensive woes?
Get back to the defensive identity, guys.
Be better.
We got be better, play better defense. All right, coming up, we are going to be talking the Clippers versus Heat game, which as of 4:57 p.m. on January 12th is happening. It's obviously a fluid situation. Want to give a big old FU to the Santa Ana Winds because they're not making anything easier. We're going to be breaking that game down. There's going to be a quick audio break coming up in 3, 2, 1.
Hey, welcome back into Clips and Dip. You're just seeing us in real time do an ad break for no reason if you're watching this on YouTube, which you should be. That's over at youtube.com/@ClippersPodcast. But anyways, we talked a little bit about the Clippers and the wall they're hitting. Could this next little stretch of games be the remedy to get things right? TBD. Chuck, where are you at? What do you see as the easiest game here to get a win?
Okay, so they got the Heat on Monday. The Nets, they play on Wednesday. The Nets are so bad. I think it's got to be the Nets. Call me crazy. Adam, you're
more so than the Heat, even with like how dysfunctional the Heat are right now.
Yeah, because over the last 5 games, here's the Nets. Here's what the Nets are 29th in. They're 29th in the 3 categories over the last 5 games. Offensive rating, points per game, and plus minus. That, like if there was a team.
Hey, the Nets are trying to make up for winning too many games earlier in the season right now. They are. They're trying to get back into the capture the flag hunt, especially after Cooper just dropped 40.
A tale of 2 course corrections, really, between the Clippers and the Nets.
This is simpatico. These are 2 teams who they should just, hey, this is what we're trying. It's going to be like a preseason game, how Doc Rivers talked about. You tell each other what you're going to run. That's what we should get from this Nets game. the defense should look better versus the Nets on Wednesday. Their offense has been so bad. For what it's worth, the Clippers have been 26th in points per game over the last 5 games. But I believe in our offense more than the Nets offense. The Heat might be difficult, though. Injury report wise, Kawhi will be available. His he seems good to come back after checking on his family, which if you had a problem with, I don't know. Go fuck yourself, I guess. This is a battle of 2 really wonky offenses. Over the last 5 games, Heat are 25th, Clippers are 28th. So this might be a bit of a rock fight. And the Heat's defense has been good over the last 5 games. So it might be a little frustrating tomorrow.
Yeah, they've won 3 in a row after losing the first 2 without Jimmy Butler with the suspension. I was looking at the on-off numbers on the season when Jimmy's on the court versus off. When he's on the court, they have basically a top 5 offense. When he's off, they got a bottom 5 offense. It's a huge, drastic swing from one way to the other. So offensively, they're struggling, but they're leaning into their defense even more right now to try to get victories.
And leaning into the defense more against the Clippers team whose offense has slipped is a little scary. Will, I know your big bugaboo, assist to turnover ratio. Clippers are 25th in that over the last 5 games.
Whew. Yeah, and it's looked it. It's looked a little.
It's past both the eye techs and the metrics.
Yeah, it's looked a little disjointed.
What are they on the season, Chuck? I'm curious.
Let me pull those stats up.
Is it that much worse than what they are
Yeah,
on the
that's
season?
true. Teams traditional. Excuse me, I have to go to the advanced stats. Assist to turnover ratio. 23rd.
Woof. Not bottom 5.
not bottom 5, but they have slipped 2 spots. So I guess they're just playing their usual careless brand of basketball over.
It's always been kind of the Clippers thing, right? Like it was in the last iteration of 2-1-3. It was like if we can keep it to like 14 turnovers a game, we're giving ourselves a chance to win.
Yeah, and we saw it. I mean, we got lucky last year too, right? Harden had 1 game with 5 turnovers or more, and it was 5, which we would all be pretty happy with. Like, gone are those days, I think. Yeah, I don't know. The Heat, it's wonky. They're always a team that, like, the guys who want to play for the Heat at the current moment always play hard and stuff like that. So this is a team. I'm not going to talk about, Heat culture or whatever, but they
got a chip on their shoulder. They always got kind of a chip on their shoulder, and now with the Jimmy Butler stuff, it's kind of doubly so. It's not exactly, it's not a matchup to take lightly, despite sort of, again, we've talked about how this team doesn't play to other teams' records, but it is they're in a spot right now where they have no incentive to not win. They could have a wealth of picks coming their way potentially on what goes down with this, or at least a first rounder. So there's no need for them to lose games, and if anything, they're trying to audition for the next whoever they end up getting in there, or if they're able to transition to the next phase of their sort of dominance, because this is a team that's like a year, 2 years removed from a finals run. I mean, it's not like
in a finals run that everyone was kind of like,
say what you want to say. Like, you still got to make. I mean, you got to make the finals. You play the teams in front of you. I don't know what you want me to say.
They did, but I mean, that kind of plays into the fact of like they're not. That was a finals run that a lot of people didn't see coming. Let's just say. So it's like they were doing more with less. That plays more into the new identity type thing.
They're gritty, and they're going to have something to prove right now without Jimmy Butler. So I'm sure they're extra motivated.
It does feel like, I don't know if it's a trap game because the Clippers haven't been playing well enough for it to be considered a trap game. You know what I mean?
There should be no trap game.
Yeah, that's fair. We're at that
100%.
For people thinking that Miami is just totally falling off, They're 20-17, just like the Clippers.
Yeah.
But that's in the
they're right
East.
there.
You're playing bums. You're playing
You're
pickup
playing-
with a bunch of plumbers.
Yeah.
Okay, there is something to that, but I still think
There's
it could
two
be
good teams in
competitive.
the East, and then there's everybody else.
They're all old. They're all guys who played in the 90s. They're playing a bunch of 60s and 70-year-olds over there. Yeah, it's going to be – I think it's going to be too close for comfort.
20-17 in the West hits different, all right? That's all I'm going to say.
I mean –
I agree. I think the Clippers are better, but Miami's defense could make this a hellish type of ball game.
Yeah.
Agreed
defense,
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, if they
It's not a cakewalk.
And we've seen kind of the blueprint to make Norm's life difficult, which is be physical with him, right? We saw the Nuggets really put that on display with Jamal Murray on him. We Lou Dort, obviously. And I'm interested, like, this is a tough test for Kawhi too, right? Because we've seen him shoot threes well. He hasn't been as willing, and I don't mean that with any negative connotation, to drive the ball. He's getting back into basketball shape. It makes sense. The lift on that one reverse layup was a little so this is a difficult game. I've now veered into being more worried about this game because I want Kawhi's 20 minutes to be good for Kawhi, and selfishly, well, that means they're good for the team anyway. But this is going to be tough for Kawhi.
Yeah, I wonder who they're going to have on him. It's going to be Jaime Jaquez out of UCLA, Rozier, or if they're going to put Bam on him. He did have one of his best dunks of last season was on Bam, who tried to guard him on the baseline, and Kawhi blew by
That's
him.
right. Yeah.
Or
Well,
Highsmith.
and they still got to deal with Zoo.
They're going to muck up the game. It's going to be a challenge. And, that's if the Clippers – it's still going to be tough to focus in. I know we're days removed from what happened in Denver, but now they're back home 100%. In their own backyard. How are you not going to be thinking about it?
And like we mentioned, or maybe we didn't mention, we were talking before this, we're not out of this yet for the people. Like the Santa Ana Winds are still being their rude, unhelpful selves seemingly earlier in this week. So that's why we kind of talked about the game being played as of now. We'll see what happens. Then they play the Nets Wednesday, who, again, horrendous basketball over the last 5 outings. Anything else to say before we pick our player of the games? We're just going to do game for the Heat game tomorrow night.
I'm good.
No, let's do it.
Right. Adam? No, we're going to go with Will because I think Adam went first last time. Will, you're Kawhi Leonard, Ivica Zubac, Norm Powell, James Harden, Jordan Miller, honorary player of the game.
Oh man. I'll go with Chris Dunn. Let's say I'll contradict Adam, even though I agree with him that I do think that DJJ is due. Let's say Chris Dunn has a solid shooting night.
Okay, and we know the defense will be on point.
Yeah.
Adam, your player of the game pick.
I took that as a challenge, and I'm going to go with Derrick Jones Jr. Against his former team.
Oh, yeah. Do you think he's starting?
I thought he was going to start against Minnesota. It's possible.
Okay, it's possible. That is as true as you can get with this. The one thing we know for sure is that it is possible that Derrick Jones Jr. will maybe start on Monday. I'm going to go. We're going to need to spark off the bench. I'm going to go Amir Coffey. Amir Coffey is going to have one of those nights where timely 3 here, scrapping for a loose ball, gets the foul call or something like that. I think Amir Coffey is going to be incredibly helpful for the Clippers. He kind of has to be, I think, tomorrow. And I hope Terrence Mann has a good game because they're still trying to figure out his minutes, which makes things wonky too.
I get one pick, Chuck.
Okay, so I have 1A, 1B. All right, that about wraps it up for this little condensed clips and dip. We hope everyone is doing okay. We're going to be doing a post-game live either after the Hornets or the Nets game. Not entirely sure. If you're able to help anyway with these fires, I'm sure there's some local volunteer things near you. Check it out. Check out K-Town for All. A lot of good stuff going on there. Will, where can these people recommend to listen to this podcast if people need something to just forget about what's going on outside?
Yeah, you can listen to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, if you happen to listen over on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you leave a little rating or review. That help us out. You can also watch this if you don't just want to listen, and you can do that over at youtube.com/@ClippersPodcast. But hey, however, if you're listening, if you're watching, however you're consuming this, we appreciate you.
We very much appreciate you. Thank you for listening. Adam, as you always do, we need one positive thing to send these Clippers folks into their week with.
Dips in the season like we're seeing from the Clippers right now, who have lost 4 or 5, happen. And they can help you refocus, and they can help you get back to your identity, your foundation, to what got you to being over 500. And I think they're going to have a locked-in attention to detail on the defensive end tomorrow night like we haven't seen in a couple of games here.
Hell
these
yeah.
dips are also not even close to the kind of dips you can catch on this show in the off season.
Oh yeah, if you guys want some food inspo, check out the off-season episodes. A little something special for you on there. Thank y'all for hanging out. I'm Chuck Walkler. This is Adam Oz and Will Updike. And as always, let's go Clippers.